Hey, what's up guys? My name is Moda and welcome back to the Mining Stacker YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to give a 1-month update on that recent release of that new Tari ASIC coming from GoldShell. Going to talk about the XT box. It's been about a month now since the announcement and things are already looking pretty horrible. Okay, so not just in terms of the fiat profitability, where any of those are going to go down. We're going to talk about the importance and why we harp so much on looking at the actual yield versus the fiat profitability and the importance of that. Okay, so we're going to talk about why we're saying a lot of people who already purchased it versus buying the coin already got wrecked and why it's probably going to continue to get worse in terms of yield and why that should be the primary focus. Okay, if that sounds good, guys, stay tuned. Let's get right to this thing. So in case you aren't familiar, there is a Tari ASIC. This was the first Tari ASIC to be released. It is coming from GoldShell. It is one of the little box miners. There was a lot of hype with this thing because it was only 1,800 bucks. And at the time of the announcement, it was scheduled to make $50 a day, right? So which we all knew was going to be essentially bullshit because what happens, right? It's an immature network where only a few dozen units was going to have your yields. We knew that that outlook wasn't going to be too great. Okay, so current profitability on this thing is all the way down to $6.50, going from the initial amount of 50 freaking dollars is what it was bringing in. Okay, so at that point it looks pretty bad. I know there's a lot of comments where like, oh well, you know, as long as it stays in this range it won't be too bad. It's probably only going to get worse. Okay, so the only reason it even looks this good is because the fiat profitability went up significantly because Tari just pumped pretty recently. Okay, it's done about a 2.5x since the initial release of that video. So realistically, if price were the same, profitability would be down to like freaking $2. Okay, so what's causing that price? Is it market makers pumping it up just to bring up the profitability look of the miner? Is it because of the Zcash privacy pivot? Who freaking knows? But understand the difference in the yield is extreme here. Okay, and this is why the focus always needs to be that. And understand also, we're going to talk about it just like in that first video because I got into it with a lot of you guys there. The review is specifically from the perspective of a miner. It's not necessarily saying whether or not Tari is a good coin to invest in. This is from the perspective of a miner and whether or not this miner is worth getting. A lot of you guys got it twisted, arguing a ton in the comments, but just want to clarify that, and this video should kind of bring to light what we were talking about. Okay, so just make sure you fully understand that, understand the dynamics of the shitty practices from these ASIC manufacturers. Another thing to mention here is that it was sold out pretty soon after release. Understand that this is also a marketing tactic that we've seen from all the ASIC manufacturers, and it's not just with ASICs, right? Any of you guys who buy any of these hype things, sneakers, things of that sort, this is something that always happens to build FOMO. It sells out initially. People think like, oh man, I gotta get it. I gotta go on a reseller and get it before it sells out. Understand it's available freely. They just do these things to build FOMO. Okay, so it's not just GoldShell. All of them do that. Make sure you understand those dynamics. It is freely available from any reseller, although just like we mentioned in that first video, would not recommend buying unless you like burning that money, which some of you guys do, or actually a lot of you guys do, right? It's extremely disappointing seeing in the comments that even after all this and breaking it down, how many of you guys buy this thing and continually buy and want to argue the point, even though the same thing kind of happens over and over. Okay, so understand though, the main thing we want to harp on is the yield. Okay, so profitability can continue to stay up. As a matter of fact, it can go back up to the $50 if Tari pumps. Okay, the one thing that is going to continue to go down though is the yield. This is why we focus on the yield so heavily, and this is a big indicator of whether or not it's worth buying or not, is how many coins you can just buy outright versus mining it. Okay, and with these immature networks, when we know your yield is going to drop drastically, right? And some people estimate it at half. That to me is a stupid argument, especially with an algo that only a few dozen units is going to double the hash rate. Okay, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what it was. yielding or supposed to be yielding initially, which we all knew was going to be bullshit. So when we look at it from that lens, right, initially this thing was going to be yielding 26,000 Tari per day. It is down to 15 freaking hundred. Massive difference in the yield, right? Profitability has gone down pretty drastic, but the yield to me is the bigger thing. Because technically, if Tari were to do another 2x from here, and let's say probably now goes back up to like 20 bucks, right? And actually doesn't look bad, but it's the yield that is going to continue to go down. So even if the fiat profitability goes up, that yield is going to continue to go down because more units are going to be coming, more units are going to be plugging in, lowering that overall yield. Okay, so that's why for me that's a bigger focus, because if it makes more sense to just buy the coin, just buy the freaking coin. So now that's where this comparison gets pretty extreme when we look at it from that lens. Okay, so just for ease purposes, we'll look at the comparison initially. If we would have just bought the coin, what the yield would have been. Okay, so at this point, easy math purposes, we know that the ASIC was 1,800 bucks, right? So we could take our $1,800 and let's say instead of buying the ASIC, we would have just bought the coins at that time, right? Which the price at the time, which again, this was about a month ago, 0.0018. So we're going to take our 1,800 bucks and we're going to divide it by the cost of the coin to see how many coins we could have just bought outright. Okay, so we could have bought 1,000,000 coins straight up, right? And this is why I'm saying some of you guys got wrecked. You should have just bought the freaking coins if you were big into Tari, because that 1,000,000 coins would now be worth over $4,500 because of that recent pump. Okay, so that's the point some of you guys are missing. You're not seeing kind of what you're missing out on. And then it gets even more drastic when we compare what you could have bought versus what you're mining now on it. Okay, so your current yield per day is about 1,500 coins. Okay, so if we're saying theoretically you could have bought 1,000,000 Tari, we're going to divide it by what you're currently yielding now if you would have bought this thing, right? So in comparison versus buying versus mining it now at this point. Okay, so we're going to take that 1,000,000, which is what we could have bought during the announcement of this thing, and we're going to divide it by what you're yielding now, which is, for easy math purposes, we'll call it 1,500. So this is how many days it would take you to mine those 1,000,000 coins if nothing changes, right? And that's a horrible number, by the way. It's kind of prefacing probably what's going to happen with Tari mining, but it'd be 666 points. Pretty funny there. But it'd take you that many days to recoup those 1,000,000 coins if nothing changes, which we know that's not going to be the case because there's only going to be more hardware coming, because you're kind of screwed either way, right? Whether Tari pumps or it dumps, there's going to be more hash rate coming and your yield is going to continue to go down. Again, that doesn't mean the profitability won't. Again, if Tari yields or if it pumps or it moons, that can stay up potentially, but that yield is going to continually go down. Again, because if it pumps, what's going to happen? They're going to release that next ASIC because that profitability number will look good, and maybe it'll go back up to the $50 with that bigger unit. And if it dumps, guess what? This thing is going to be down in the shitter, down to break even or at a loss, and they have to release the next gen just to get those sales in. Okay, so that's one where we say you're kind of at a lose-lose. Ideally, what you want is this thing just go sideways. Okay, I know that sounds kind of weird initially, but that's the reason. With these immature networks, your yield is a massive factor. Okay, it's not necessarily that big of a factor with something established, like with Script or with Bitcoin. It is a big deal, but not like it is with this thing. It's not going to be as extreme. Again, going from 25,000 down to 1,500, that is freaking extreme. Okay, it's going to take you a shit ton of time to recoup that. And even if you're interested in purchasing it now, even looking at the numbers now, it still doesn't look great. Okay, because if we take the 1,800 bucks and even at its current price right now, let's see how many coins we'd yield. About 394,000, right? So even basing it off of the current numbers, we take the 400,000 again for easy math purposes and divide it by the 1,500 you're yielding now. Your best case scenario is that it takes you 266 days to recoup that. If nothing changes, which we know it's not, it's going to be worse than this. Okay, and that's just to break even on what you would do, which is buying the coin outright. Okay, this is why we're saying focus on your yield. Your yield needs to be number one. Again, that doesn't mean if you bought this thing you're necessarily screwed. There is always the chance that Tari does moon, right? We've seen the case with Zcash. We see what's happening there. Maybe it continues to trickle down, and maybe this thing does. Again, it's only a $10 million market cap. Okay, but at the end of the day, for me, it's yield over everything. It's the amount of coins you're getting over everything. To me, that's what matters the most, because that's how you're going to maximize that profit. So it makes sense to get into something where you can theoretically, potentially yield more coins by buying the ASIC versus buying them over an extended period of time. And this is why the benefit with ASICs is the long term. And if you're in a timeline in the cycle where you think we only have anywhere from 3 to 6, maybe 9 months left, potentially as low as only a few months left, this is not appealing at all. Buying hardware in general at this time isn't appealing at all. Okay, so this is why we're harsh on it. And again, it's coming from the perspective of a miner and whether or not it makes sense to buy this piece of hardware. Got into it with a lot of you guys talking about Tari, etc., etc. Again, it's from the perspective of mining this thing and whether or not this ASIC is worth buying. And you guys who aren't too familiar with the ASIC side of thing and you think it's a coin that's going to do well, you want it to do well, this is why you do not want ASICs on the network this early. Okay, you just kind of wreck your network in a lot of ways, because people maybe who were bullish on Tari said, yeah, this is the first one, I want to support, I want to buy it, not knowing any of these implications, and they get wrecked, and now they leave the community because they're like, F Tari, I just got fucked over, even though it had nothing necessarily to do with the protocol. It's from the mining aspect that this happened. Okay, so this is why we're so kind of against a lot of these when they're not ready. The emissions don't make sense. It's just way too early for this. Way too early. Okay, so again, you're kind of screwed either way. Whether Tari pumps or dumps, it's not looking good from the mining perspective to buy this piece of hardware. Does that mean mining is done forever? No, potentially another manufacturer comes in, it's a more efficient unit, comes farther down the road, maybe the emissions can then justify it. That changes things, but from this point right here, right now, or from the point in comparison to when this was announced, in my opinion, based on the yield and what it could have been, you 100% already got wrecked in the matter of a few weeks. Okay, so it doesn't mean it's game over. There's always the possibility that this thing moons. Hopefully it does. Again, we do not want these things to fail. We want these proof of work projects to succeed. But again, we do these reviews based on the mining perspective, whether or not it makes sense to buy the hardware to mine this thing. Okay, and to me, this is one of the biggest killers of these networks that aren't ready for it. Okay, so again, if you are a Tari fan, you're a person who's pro it, you want to see them get off of these freaking ASICs. Okay, you want to see them just get rid of that SHA-3X and maybe just keep a CPU, GPU, because they are a unique algo in that sense that is theoretically what they could do, right? Will it screw over purchasers of the hardware? Absolutely, but that's kind of the risk there, and this is why the risk needs to make sense. And to me, it was just way too risky. Obviously, to me, it's already a huge failure. Again, going from 26,000 down to 1,500, and this is only likely to get worse. Again, we'll throw up a prayer. Hopefully, Tari moons for you guys. But again, this is why we continue to harp. Yield over everything. Look at the numbers. Run numbers. And again, if it doesn't make sense from the get-go, then who cares about everything else, right? At this point, it's on to the next one. But again, for a lot of you newer guys, or a lot of people who are confused when we're always saying to focus on the yield versus the fiat profitability, this is a great example why. Okay, and this is why it continues to be the perspective and why it's so risky dealing with these immature networks. Okay, especially when there's so much hype, because unfortunately, there were a lot of people shilling this thing, because again, a lot of people work with GoldShell, and this is one of the primary reasons I refuse to do any deals with GoldShell, do any promotions for them, even if it's a free ASIC, whatever, just because, again, it continually screws over these newer people. Okay, like, it breaks my heart every time I do these videos, and I even had just recent comments like, oh, as long as it stays in this range, I'm good. Bro, you got wrecked. Like, it's, again, for you guys who are up on a lot of other things and you're degenning, you're taking the risk, that's one thing. The unfortunate part, though, is the majority of people who buy this trash are people who are brand new. They're seeing these little unboxing videos or whatever videos regarding it, and this is why they're getting in, and this is why mining YouTube is in the gutter, right? It's just preying on these newer people instead of telling it like it is. One of the only ones I'll give prop is RPM. Shout out to him for doing it the right way. He put his thumbnail as don't buy this thing. That's the way to do it, right? Instead of doing these other, oh, I'll leave it up to you. You might get wrecked. Like, it's run the numbers. Look at the numbers. A lot of these just don't make sense, guys. Hopefully one day we'll get to the point where things can make more sense. Again, at the end of the day, people just have to vote with their wallet, right? And until that happens, they're going to continue to see these releases. We're going to continue to talk about them. We're going to continue to grill them, though, raise awareness. Hopefully one day we'll get to that point. Slowly, I like to think at least that we've been making a difference. And a lot of you guys have been joining us on this journey, and you're already seeing it, right? As soon as I make these videos, you're already putting in the comments before you even see it. Yep, they're going to get wrecked, and that brings me joy. As weird as that sounds, because you're seeing the bigger picture. You already know what's going to happen here. And as a community, we all need to get on this level. We all need to be critical of these things because, again, at the end of the day, we want to hold these mining companies accountable, essentially, right? And again, they're not going to stop releasing these things or lowering the prices until people stop buying these things, right? So, again, will we ever get to that point? Probably not, right? This channel does not tend to grow very well, and that's fine, right? At the end of the day, for me, I'm more of a hobbyist YouTuber, an actual miner trader, right? Versus most people, it's on the opposite. They're pro YouTubers, and they're focused on that, and they're doing, again, that's a whole different thing. I don't even want to get into too much. But at the end of the day, guys, focus on the yield, look at the numbers, and this is why we're such a big strategy channel, and that's why the focus is here, because again, at the end of the day, if it doesn't make sense here, who gives a shit about the unboxing? Who gives a shit about how quiet it is? Who gives a shit about the wattage if it doesn't even make sense to get to that point, right? Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? Do you guys think something similar? Do you guys think I'm all full of shit? Do you guys disagree with the numbers, even though proof is in the pudding, guys? Let me know in the comments what do you guys think. Please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'm out.